Pesach is called the time of our freedom, believe it or not. Zman Chayruteinu, in the Torah, each festival gets its own identity. Passover gets an identity, not only the time of coming out of Egypt, but it's also the Zman Chayruteinu, the time of our freedom. Okay, so a big highlight for most people is the 4 questions, right? Whoever the youngest in the family, and this is actually brought down in Halakha, that if whoever it is, if a child is meant to ask his father 4 questions, that's our custom, and if a child is not around, so then the youngest sitting at the table should ask, and if it's just 2 people, then one should ask the other, and if one is by oneself, having one own seder, one should ask oneself the 4 questions. It's brought down. It's very important to ask the 4 questions.
Is it youngest regardless of gender?
Yeah. Well, actually, the truth is, it's actually brought down in, I'm not sure, it's a good question. In most Haggadot, it says, V'kan haben shoel, and here the son asks. It's to a degree, there's an idea of it. The son asking, but ultimately, my understanding, it's a very good question. I think you can devote a whole class to that. Who
asks the question, and if there's no male child, then does it go to a male adult?
When my sister was the youngest, she would ask. Yeah.
Okay.
Nobody's been doing it for years.
I know what we're all doing. I want to know what we're supposed to do. I mean, what does it shaky sure? Then what does it say?
The kind of eventual, it says, and here the son asks. That's what it says in Halacha. Maimonides. I think the tradition, I'm not sure, Okay. I'm not sure.
You tell us next week.
Because tradition follows through the mother as well as through the father. There's 2 ideas of Jewish tradition. There's the idea of Ba'al tituf Torah, do not forsake the Torah of your mother. There is a specific tradition within Judaism that follows through the mother as well as through the father. The father teaches the son Torah. Okay. We asked the 4 questions. Anyone want to take a dash? I know it's been a year, almost, and what the 4 questions are.
One in English, that's about it.
No, in English, a summary.
Is it different from
okay, yes. Because all other nights we eat...
Matzah.
Unleavened.
No, we said
unleavened bread. Tonight we only eat matzah.
All other nights we eat either matzah or chametz, leavened bread, and tonight we only eat matzah. Question number 1. Question number 2?
Dipping.
You dip once.
Twice?
Yeah.
All other nights we...
Dip once?
Don't dip at all. Tonight we dip twice.
Yeah.
Unless you have French fries and ketchup.
Question number 3? Reclining. All other nights we don't recline. Tonight we recline. And then number 4, bitter herb. There you go. All other nights we eat what?
I love the way you say it. Yeah. Bitter herbs. Herbs.
That's okay. All other nights we eat vegetables. Tonight we eat maror. That's the question. Okay. What's the answer?
Which question?
I'm asking what's the answer that is given in the Haggadah. It's fantastic. The Haggadah presents the 4 questions, and then it gives one answer. And the answer is, we were slaves to Pharaoh in Egypt. Right? Avarim hayinu leFaro b'Mitzrayim. We were slaves to Pharaoh in Egypt. And God took us out with an outstretched arm, and with great miracles. And then we say a very fascinating sentence. We say as follows: and had God not taken us out, we, our children, our children's children would still be slaves to Pharaoh in Egypt. Right? Most puzzling statement. Most puzzling statement. There's one thing saying it while you're in the desert, sitting at the Passover table back in whatever year it was. What year was that?
2 years later.
2044, whatever it was. But we're in modern times. How long ago did the Egyptian Empire exist?
2,000 years ago.
Over 2,000 years ago, right? 3,000 years ago, right? At least 3,000 years ago. Right? Since the Egyptian Empire, we've had the Assyrian Empire, we've had the Babylonian Empire, we've had the Greek Empire, we had the Roman Empire, and I forgot to stick in, we've had the Persian Empire, which made a little bang in history for a couple of years and then disappeared. Right? Anyone heard of Pharaoh?
No.
No?
What?
No Pharaoh.
Not anymore.
Oh, they exist
Not
now?
later.
Yeah, it's all gone.
Right? So we say, and that's the first statement over here, we were slaves to Pharaoh in Egypt. If the Holy One had not taken our fathers out of Egypt, then we, our children, and our children's children would have remained enslaved we don't just say would have remained enslaved in Egypt. Okay, by the way, I don't know if any of you have noticed, but Egypt is in a bit of political mess right now. Okay? And we don't say we would have remained enslaved in Egypt, but we say we would have remained enslaved to Pharaoh in Egypt. Okay, we put an emphasis on Pharaoh being the one who's enslaving us, as well as Egypt as well. And our question is, question number one is, anyone heard of an Egyptian slave lately? What's the political situation in Egypt nowadays like? Question number two, why both Pharaoh and also Mitzrayim, Egypt? Okay, number three, we just need a quick introduction. And the introduction goes as follows. Teach you a beautiful Moroccan, North African custom between my mother and my father. They both have their own custom. And it goes like this. The first section of the Haggadah is to break the matzah. Well, we make Kiddush, and then the first section of the Haggadah is we break the matzah and we say, Halach ma'anya. This is the bread of affliction. Then, usually there's the Manishtana. Before the Manishtana, I believe that other North African communities have a similar custom. My mother's family would do it with the entire Seder plate, and she told me that it wasn't a Seder plate, it was a huge entire basket that held all the matzah that everyone's going to eat for that night, all the maror that they're all going to, everything. It was a huge big basket. They do it with this basket. And my father's family, their tradition is to do it with a huge bouquet of flowers. So Passover was a special time where my mother would spend a significant amount of time buying this huge, putting it together, this huge array of flowers. Does anyone know a good place where I can get a nice bouquet of flowers, by the way? I've been there.
Really nice that one with Cherry Creek.
Not as expensive as Cherry Creek, but I'll look for. Okay. Anyway, so what they do is we have this huge bouquet of flowers that takes up a significant amount of space on the table, and someone is awarded the honor of doing the bibhilu. Bibhilu is an Arabic word. Bibhilu, it's actually an Aramaic word as well, and it means with haste. Okay? And we sing a song, and the song goes as follows: Bibhilu yatzanu miMitzrayim. With haste, we left Egypt. Now we are here. Next year, L'shana Barad Israel. Next year, may we be in the land of Israel. This year we are here, slaves. Next year we'll be free in Jerusalem. That's the way we sing the song. It's a beautiful, beautiful song, and it goes like this: anyone who's a guest at a house gets the fright of their life. Basically, the person who gets this honor, he takes this and he walks around. He's walking around the entire table behind each person, and he hovers the plate over each person a couple of times and move over to the next person, swing it like this, and we all sing the song. That's our custom.
What does it signify?
Yeah.
Fantastic. That's number 3, bibhilu, with haste. Bibhilu means with haste. What it signifies, and I'm not 100% sure. Okay, my thesis is like this. It's just something I grew up with, so that was just something you didn't really think about until I prepared the class. I think when what they're doing with hovering the plate is they're kind of making this person as part of the group. It's part of the people who are going to be included in this process. And ultimately, what the Seder represents to a big degree is that right now we believe that we're in exile, and our sages say in Passover we were brought out free, we're redeemed, and Passover is the festival where we will be redeemed. We will go out of exile and go to the land of Israel. So it's almost as if whoever's at this table, we're all including ourselves in this process of the Pesach Seder, and that we believe that through this we will eventually be able to merit the ultimate redemption of the coming of the Messiah and going back to Israel. Where did the idea come from? So bibhilu means with haste. Okay, with haste is a idea from the Talmud. Oh, actually, I'm not even sure. I think it might even be a verse. I think it's a verse, actually.
I like that legal phrase, time is of the essence.
Well, what happened is like this. Our sages tell us that God rushed us out of Egypt. He rushed us out of Egypt because ultimately what was happening was that over that 210-year period of slavery, the Jewish nation were falling down spiritual levels, and we're of the belief that there are 50 rungs of spiritual levels, and we had reached level number 49. Had you reached number 50, we would never have been able to be redeemed. So God needed to rush us out of Egypt. And if I'm not mistaken, it doesn't come to me right now, but I think there's actually a verse that talks about God rushed us out of Egypt. But there is this idea that we commemorate that God rushed us out of Egypt. And He rushed us out, as the sages say, because we had reached level number 49, and He didn't want us to reach number 50, because had we reached number 50, we would never have been able to leave Egypt. By the way, 49 days from Passover, to Shavuot, and that is symbolized by the climbing back of those rungs that we climb from the lowest level that we were at the time of Pesach till right up to the festival of Shavuot, right up to the highest level that we were able to reach, which was in the time of giving of the Torah. Okay. This idea is a very puzzling idea. What does it mean that you hit the 50th level and God is not able to take you out? Very simple. Open the chains and you take the person out, and the person is out. What does it mean that all of a sudden, if they had hit the 50th level, you're not able to leave? Okay, this is the idea that we want to develop. If you have ideas, let them turn in your head a little bit and just think it out a little bit. Okay, number 4. How many mitzvot on the night of Pesach? Okay, so I counted 7. Okay, 7 active mitzvot, 7 active positive commandments that we're able to fulfill on the night of Pesach. So one of them would be make kiddush, another one would be to eat matzah, another one would be to
light candles.
Well, light candles is an additional mitzvah besides for the 7 that I count.
Okay.
And telling over the story, eating the festive meal. There's at least 7 mitzvot that we're able to fulfill.
What's
on the eating of the afikomen, the eating of the maror, drinking 4 cups. How many you got so far?
There was one after the meal. What did you say?
Drinking the wine.
Wine.
The festive meal, afikomen, 4 cups.
Kiddush, matzah, maror, the festive meal, afikomen, 4 cups of wine, telling over the story. That's 7. Okay, so what you got?
Kiddush. Oh, Kiddush is 2 the same one. Never mind. 4
You
cups
got
of Kiddush are the same.
No, it's different.
They're not.
Kiddush, 4 cups, matzah, maror, festive meal, afikomen, and telling over the story of
4, 5, 6. Yeah, I have it.
Okay.
3, 6,
7 mitzvot. 7 mitzvot and lighting candles. 8.
Okay.
No other festival in the Jewish calendar has so many mitzvot. And, by the way, if you get rid of your chametz, okay, you have fulfilled at least 4 prohibitions. You have fulfilled not fulfilling 4 prohibitions. Can someone say that in English?
You don't violate anything.
You don't violate. Thank you very much. Okay, you don't violate any of 4 prohibitions. If you get rid of all your chametz, you're not violating at least 4 prohibitions. Because 4 prohibitions are not to have chametz in your possession, not to see chametz, not to eat chametz, and to get rid of chametz before Pesach. For the 4 prohibitions that we were meant to fulfill. Okay, so 7 and 4.
What about the ones, aren't there some that say you're not supposed to eat unkosher fish or unkosher this or unkosher, wouldn't those be counted in?
I wouldn't count them. I'm talking about specifically located to the festival of Passover. Okay, 11 mitzvahs, I don't think we get that anywhere. You won't find any other festival. So what's the idea of so many mitzvot? Okay, remind me if I don't come back to this question. It's important that I deal with the question as well. Why so many mitzvot on the festival of Passover? Okay, in order to explain, to try and attack some of these questions, we will lay down a foundation. Foundation is as follows. Rabbi Dessler says that most things that have depth, you have 2 aspects that you're able to analyze them from. You have the external and you have the internal. Okay? So, for example, a car, okay? We have the external part of the car and we have the internal part of the car. The way I like to call it is you have the female perspective on a car and you got the male perspective of the car, right? How big is your motor?
6-cylinder.
Okay, how big is your motor, Susan? There we go. What color is your car? Exactly. There we go. Exactly. So, the way. Well, okay. This is just how men and women think. A woman looks at it from the external perspective. Does it look nice? Is it comfortable? And does it achieve what I needed to achieve? A male perspective doesn't care so much about the shape, about the color. Well, unfortunately, women have had an influence on us. We don't care so much about the shape or the color or the comfortability as much as we care about the size of the engine, how fast it's able to go, fuel efficiency, and whatever else is happening inside that motor. Right? The designers of the body of the car have to work very tightly together with the designers of the motor of the car. Okay? And the goal is that the designer of the body his goal is to hide the motor as much as possible, the existence of the engine as much as possible, while the person who's designing the engine needs to design as big, as powerful an engine as possible within that framework. It's like they have to work really close together. But ultimately, it's these two things. You can look at a car from the external perspective. It's how it looks, and then you can look at the car, and then there's the other perspective of the internal perspective, and they're both fundamental. Okay. Similarly, we have the body, the human body. We have the external perspective of how I look, and then we have the internal perspective of
how it works.
How it works, what's happening inside, my emotions, my feelings, my drives, whatever they are, that's happening inside. By the way, okay. How do you say face in Hebrew? Anyone have any idea? Face. Panim. Fantastic. Panim. Okay. Now, panim, that's the Hebrew word for face. Panim can be read as panim. Okay. And panim means inside. Where is your mother? She is bifnim, inside. Where, inside. The face is the only part of the body, well, usually it's the only part of the body that has the capability of showing you what's actually happening inside. The face is the mirror of what's actually happening inside. We actually think, well, the face is your external. Ultimately, the face has that capability of showing the internal. But it's just by the side. But, having said that, we have the body and we have the spirit. The internal, we talk the spirit, we talk about the intellect. Okay? If I were to ask you to point to your emotions, your emotions, where would you point? Right. That's your emotions are.
Would you point?
Head.
Yeah, so did I.
You both point to your head? Unbelievable. I would think that the emotions lie within the heart. That's what I would have thought. And the intellect lies within the mind. Okay, let's just take my perspective for now. Okay, I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying let's just work with my perspective. It works better in my class. Okay. We have the physical part of the body, and then we have the internal, the spiritual part of the body. Similarly, we have something called the physical exile. Now, what would lie on the other side of our box with regards to exile? If I talk about the physical exile, then what would be on the other side of the box? Spiritual exile. Fantastic. You have the physical exile, and you've got your spiritual exile. So, how would that work? So, for example, Jewish nation, we'll call them, Jewish nation are, let's talk about straight after the destruction of the temple, the Jewish nation were taken into exile to Rome, Italy, wherever it was, Egypt. Okay, Jewish nation were taken into exile, so they were physically in exile. Now, at the same time, while they were physically in exile, they were also spiritually in exile, because as long as they were in the land of Israel, as long as they had a temple, as long as they had a Sanhedrin, they had a ruling body, Jewish nation were united, their capability of spiritual achievements was tremendous. Okay, versus being taken out of the country, away from the destroyed temple, no Sanhedrin, no ruling Jewish body. Okay, so they're on a spiritual exile as well. Okay, which means they're not able to achieve the spiritual levels that they would have liked to achieve, or seemingly. Okay, then taking that one step further, if I talk about a physical slavery, so what would be the next? What would be in the other box? Have a physical slave, have something called a spiritual slave. Fantastic.
That's why I know I'm taking notes. I'm not like texting.
What happened to the iPad? It died?
Wow. I just didn't want you to think that was rude.
Thanks. Okay. If you look down at the bottom, over here, these 5 Hebrew words, we have the word, top right-hand side is the word Mitzrayim. That's how you'd write it in Hebrew. On the left-hand side of that word Mitzrayim, I broke it up into 2 words, and the 2 words are Meitzar Yam. Meitzar Yam. Okay. Meitzar is a word used in Psalms. King David used it. He said, Mina ha-meitzar karatika, from the dire straits I've called out to God. Mina meitzar karatika. Okay. Now, Meitzar Yam in Hebrew is an ocean. Okay. So Meitzar is the straits of a yam, an ocean. Okay. So what is a strait of an ocean? By the way, if you don't believe me, I looked it up on Wikipedia. Meitzar Yam means strait of an ocean.
Strait is
like dire straits.
Dire straits. A-I-T.
Straight is like a thin path. Correct. Very good. Okay, so straits of an ocean. So, for example, if you can imagine the Mediterranean Ocean, you just take a look. Okay, the Mediterranean Ocean meets the Atlantic Ocean. Right? Everyone familiar with that? Okay, where do they meet?
Straits of Gibraltar.
Straits of Gibraltar. Right? There's a thin section between Spain and Morocco, which they call the Straits of Gibraltar, and over there, the Mediterranean Sea meets the Atlantic Ocean. Okay, if it were not a strait, okay, then it wouldn't be fair to call it a Mediterranean Sea and an Atlantic Ocean. Usually one of the identities will overwhelm the other identity. This way, as long as you've got a strait, they're both intertwined, they're both connected, okay? However, they both have their own identities. You've got the Mediterranean Sea and you've got the Atlantic Ocean. I was going to say joke. That is the secret to Egypt. That was the joke. Okay, that was the joke I'm about to explain. The human being, this is Rabbi Eliyahu Dessler, he explains this as follows. He says the human being is made up of two powerful elements. We have the external part of the human being, we have the internal part of the human being. We have the physical part of the human being, and we have the spiritual part of the human being. Two very, very powerful elements. Okay. We believe that the most powerful part of the soul, the most intense part of the soul, lies in the head, in the brain. In fact, the intellect, which is we'll call our guide to ethics, morals, they lie inside the brain. Okay? Our physical drives, our lust, our emotions, our physical body, that lies in the body. Okay? The physical part of the human being lies in the body, while the spiritual part lies in the head. Okay? Therefore, in order for the body to exist, you have two independent pieces. You have two independent bodies. Body is not a good word because we're talking about body now.
Systems.
Two independent systems, okay? Now, the only way you have a human being is when they're both connected. Okay? You have the head, and it's connected to the body, and that is the functioning of the human being. The human being has his natural drives, and he has his intellect that pulls him towards morals and ethics, and hopefully he's able to work himself through the craziness of this world, right? With the crazy two forces. Okay? Where do they meet? They meet at the neck. Okay? Now, it's not for nothing. It's not for nothing. From a spiritual perspective, that if you want to put a person to death, the way you would most commonly do it is disconnect the head from the body. Okay? That is, what you're doing is, you're separating the head from the body. You're separating these two entities. And ultimately, what you're left with is no human being. Okay? And that happens where? At the neck. The neck is the place where if you want to hang a person, ultimately it does. True. What you are doing, you're cutting off his capability of breathing. Very true. I'm just curious. I'm curious to know if any doctors have given a theory why we have to breathe through our mouth, and why couldn't we have a pipe right over here, right next to whatever, right in the middle, below, wherever on the side, right, where we could breathe through. Why does it have to come? Everything has to come through even when we eat, right? We don't just feed food over here or through into our stomach, right? It has to go through our mouth. No?
Not food. You can put it into the...
Technically you can. How long can you last with that?
Yeah.
Forever? Yeah?
You're not independent. You have to be hooked up to something, right?
Okay.
No, feeding tube.
Right.
Okay. I'll leave it at that.
But it's natural is what you're saying.
It's interesting that everything that we do, or that most things that we do, it works through the head.
Okay.
Through the head that we need to breathe, through the head we need to eat, we need to drink, through the head. Right. Here we need to see, collect information through sight, right? All works through the head. And I haven't developed this theory, I haven't seen it yet, just coming up with it now, my theory is that mankind has the capability of taking every physical action that is available within this world and turning it into a spiritual activity. Okay? And therefore, I'm able to eat and create that and use food as a spiritual activity, and therefore it needs to go through the mouth, which is in the head, and not directly into the stomach, because the head, to a big degree, is the control of spirit. I'll leave it at that. Ask Rabbi Larifeld in the Kabbalah class.
As a play on words, is that why we call this stiff-necked people?
Stiff-necked people.
Since that's our neck.
No, I think the stiff-necked means people who refuse to
I know, but I'm just wondering because you're making things on neck.
Good point.
Okay,
Mitzrayim, for example. Okay, Mitzrayim, Egypt. Okay, they were taking control of the Jewish nation, not merely by physically controlling the Jewish nation, but ultimately they were controlling the Jewish nation also from a spiritual perspective. Now, if you want to control a person from a spiritual perspective, what you want to do is you want to cut off, right? You want to cut off the capability of the mind, of the brain, of the soul, being able to influence the body, and you want to bypass that. Where do you bypass that? At the neck. It's not for nothing Mitzrayim is called Meitzar Yam, the straits of an ocean. Meaning, you have two bodies of water, you have a human being, you have two parts, you have the mind, you have the brain, the intellect, the ethics, the morals, and you have the body, the physical. And the Egyptians, where they grabbed the Jewish nation, where they were holding the Jewish nation, was at the neck. That was the place where they were holding them. They were holding them at that point. That point was where the soul was affecting, was influencing the physical. So ultimately, when we say we were slaves to Pharaoh in Egypt, we weren't just merely physical slaves, but we were also spiritual slaves as well. Pharaoh, Paro, he had a trick. How was he successful in doing this? And the way he did this was he never gave the Jewish nation a place where they could call their own. He never gave them a space where they could call their own privacy, their own independent space, whether it be physical space or emotional or spiritual space. He never allowed that to happen. How did he do that? Our sages tell us the root of the word paro, and that's the next word at the bottom left-hand side, is parua. Parua means open. It means the opposite of it means violated. It means open to the elements, right? It's paro, what? Exposed. There we go. Thank you. The word I keep forgetting. There was no place where the Jewish nation could go whereby they could have their own little space, their own little corner, whether it be a physical corner or a spiritual corner. And Paro did amazing things. If you read the commentaries on the tricks that he played with the Jewish nation in order to ensure that they don't get this place, what he did was he forced males to do female labor and females to do male labor. He'd do a phenomenal amount of cruelty. He constantly was abusing them from not only a physical angle but also from a spiritual angle. That was the essence of Pharaoh. Okay, so when we talk about servitude of the soul, and this is where I like to bring a beautiful example of our good friend Nelson Mandela. Everyone heard of Nelson Mandela? Mm-hmm. Former political prisoner of South Africa for how long? Any guesses?
19 years.
Long time. 25 years. He was in jail for 25 years, this guy. Okay? Now, Nelson Mandela, I've got a picture in my home. I got this book from Rabbi Franklin before he left. He let me go through his library. He was like, take whatever books you want. So I found a book on Nelson Mandela. I took it. They've got a picture there. It's a big book. So my kids where I grew up. I never knew, by the way, till 1991, I did not know of the existence of Nelson Mandela. I did not know. I grew up from 1975 to 1991. In 1990, I did not know the existence of Nelson Mandela. Full stop.
You were in the country.
What?
You were in the country.
In the country. Okay? No one knew of his existence. No white person knew of his existence. You know why we never knew of his existence? Because he was on an island called Robben's Island for the past 25 years. Okay? So before I was even born, he was, I think it was 1968. I don't know, someone needs to do the math. I think it came out in 92, minus 25.
It wasn't exactly in your history lesson.
What?
67.
67, fantastic. 67, 68, he was put into prison, and that was it. You never heard of him again. No one heard about him. The blacks knew about him, and they always idolized him, but we didn't have anything to do with him. We had no clue of his existence. So, I have a picture in the book, and it shows what he did for 25 years on Robben's Island. Robben's Island was this island off the coast of South Africa. You could never escape. Yeah, they showed his cell. They had an area which is about probably smaller than this area, outdoors. Okay, and they had a row of, let's say, space by 6 feet, and at every 6 feet there was a block of cement, this big, Okay, and they had a blanket that was folded up on top of that, and they all sat down on this rock, about this high off the ground. Okay, and each person had a chisel, and he got a brick, and what he did the entire day was chisel down the brick into small rocks. That's what he did the entire day for 25 years. This person did that. Okay? And why did he do that? Why was he in prison? He was in prison because he believed that black people are equal to as white people. And that it makes no difference what color your skin is. You are a human being, and you deserve to be treated that way. That's why he was in jail. For 25 years, he sat chiseling away at a brick until he made this little pile, and they took away the pile, gave him another brick. And they didn't know where the pile went to. They didn't know where the bricks came from. They knew nothing. That's what he did for 25 years. Okay. That was a physical slavery, in my opinion. Okay. What's the litmus test whether you're being a spiritual slave or not? When you walk out of prison, after 25 years of chopping down bricks, and then you very soon after, you voted in to become the president of the entire country, and you're given a phenomenal amount of power and backing of 70-80% of the entire country, and yet at that point in time you still say every human being is equal and makes no difference to me if you're black or if you're white, if you're colored, if you're Indian. That is a person who is always a free spiritual person. He was never spiritually enslaved. That's my opinion. He was chopping a brick for 25 years. I do not have a comprehension of how he could have done that. Chopping bricks down for 25 years, and still, inside his head, there was a place that he went to and he said, I'm a free man, and just like I'm a free man, every other human being is a free man. Never to let go of that dream. Phenomenal idea. Okay. Our sages tell us, by the way, I'm going till 9:15, I hope that's okay. Okay, it's 9:03, 9:02. Our sages tell us, number 5, that no slave ever escaped Egypt. And my question was, what do you mean no slave ever escaped Egypt? Why not? So what was the problem, right?
So kind of what you just said, that the people, that their emotional, that the spiritual part was still with them, that they had not lost. So that they weren't a slave, in other words. No. Spiritually, they were still free.
Well, our sages say that no slave ever escaped Egypt. No slave was ever able to escape Egypt. And what I mean by that is exact opposite.
Right.
Nelson Mandela was always a free spiritual man. Okay? When we say that no slave was ever able to escape from Egypt, what we mean is that even if a person was able to physically get out of Egypt, he was mentally still a slave in Egypt. And therefore he was not able to function with outside his Egyptian existence. Okay? Classic example that I gave is the Shawshank. That I give over here is the Shawshank Redemption, right? Everyone watched the movie?
Mm-hmm. He knows it by heart.
Right? Well, if he knows it by heart, so what was the old man's name?
Ray?
Was his name Ray? That he walked out free?
Morgan Freeman?
No. Morgan Freeman. No, I'm saying there was a different guy.
Speaking of the green one.
Speaking of the green one, right. Okay, so, no.
Oh, the one who left the farm?
Yeah.
Hold on me, I can't think of it.
Okay, there we go.
We'll go back to this again.
His name was Bob, I think.
No.
Wasn't Bob? Okay.
Let's
right?
Bob.
Okay. Well, anyway, there was a guy, I don't remember. Someone told me that it was Bob. Well, so maybe we'll see. There was, what?
Red.
R-E?
R-E-D.
R-E-D?
That's what's right.
Red. Great.
It was engraved on the...
Red was here, right?
Red was here.
Red was here. Fantastic. Okay, how long was he in jail for?
Who? Red? All his life.
All his life. Which was how long?
50 years.
50 years. Fantastic. Okay, great. So there we go. I like to use this example. I think it's a great classic example. Red walked a free man out of prison. Okay? And he was given the opportunity of integrating into society. Okay? But he was not, although he walked physically out of prison, ultimately, mentally, spiritually, for our intents and purposes, he was still a slave to that society. He was still part of the prison system. He did not know how to integrate into a normal society, and therefore, after a few days of him being out of prison, trying to live in a job, trying to function within society, he couldn't handle it, and he hung himself. Right? He couldn't function outside.
Oh, I haven't seen the movie, you just ruined it.
No, I didn't ruin it at all. You haven't seen the movie? Don't worry, I haven't ruined it at all. That's a great part. Well, now you'll see that part with a new...
It's similar to people that are in the service, that go to the army or whatever, and they come back and their minds are...
Vietnam, right?
Right. Yeah, they don't function very well.
Right.
Well, you're talking about the Jews, though, in Egypt here. One of the reasons why they didn't try to escape is because they had no place to go. They didn't have a home. They didn't have a homeland. They had all moved down into Egypt, so where were they going to go if they tried to escape?
But technically...
So I'm saying it wasn't any Jew, no slave in the history of the Egyptian Empire ever walked out of it. Whether it was a Jew, a Canaanite, a Syrian, made no difference. He was a slave there, he was a slave forever. He never was able to walk free. And ultimately what that means to me was he may have even been able to physically walk out, but ultimately he was not able to function outside that society. Mentally, he was a slave. His ethics and morals, he was a slave. That's what he was. Okay, forget escape from Christ. Number 6.
Okay.
We say that God took us out of Egypt with haste because we had hit the 49th level. Okay, so the classic example that I give over here is, if you're familiar with the ideology of Alcoholics Anonymous, AA. So AA have this idea: a person's an alcoholic. Once a person is an alcoholic, a real alcoholic, he's always an alcoholic for the rest of his life. Okay, and which means that he'll never be able to, for the rest of his life, never be able to drink like a normal human being. Okay, so for me, thank God, at the moment, I'm not an alcoholic. It takes a tremendous amount of effort for me to get drunk on Purim, tremendous amount of pain, tremendous amount of effort. But at the moment, thank God, I'm not an alcoholic. Therefore, when I've had this bottle of whiskey that's been sitting at my house since last Shavuot. Okay, we had about this much left. It was sitting on the counter 2 weeks ago. I was, getting rid of this before Pesach, and I took the bottle, I poured it down the sink. It was a good bottle of whiskey. I don't keep cheap bottles of whiskey. It was a good bottle of whiskey. I try not to hold whiskey over Pesach, right? So I'm out of the understanding that would be a phenomenal challenge for a person who's an alcoholic to do that, because he cannot live with this capability of being able to have alcohol and being able to consume it and actually pour it down and get rid of it. And ultimately that's not such a good example, but ultimately the truth is that if an alcoholic takes the first drink, he has no defense against the second drink. That's ultimately what it is. So if I take a shot of whiskey, if someone gives me a shot of whiskey, that is all that I can handle, full stop, right? You can try and put whatever you want. Maybe a Blue Label, I'll try and try a little bit, but I can't handle anymore, right? An alcoholic cannot not handle anymore. Once you start drinking, cannot stop, full stop. Once that, it's like a mental thing that they talk about a chemical reaction, that once alcohol has entered his bloodstream, he's not able to stop ever. He's not able to stop until he gets absolutely drunk and is in a stupor. Alcoholics, AA say that at some point in time they were normal human beings, they're normal people, okay? And at some point in time, due to their abuse of alcohol, they crossed that invisible line whereby they can never ever drink like a normal human being ever again. There's like an invisible line where they crossed, okay? So for example, prior to that stage, they were able to take a drink and put it down and never be able to, and have the bottle in front of them and not have this tremendous drive to drink. Over time, due to their abuse of their body, of the alcohol, whatever it is, they have crossed the line whereby when alcohol hits their body, they're not able to stop to drink. Okay. Same thing with regards to spirituality. Okay, our sages tell us that every level that the Jewish nation were hitting down and down and down, there was always a point, until they hit the 49th level, there was always a point where the morals and ethics within the soul, within the brain, was able to influence the body. Okay? Initially it started off at the 49th level, starts at very low, very small influences, very weak influences, but they are able to influence. At some point in time, when it falls down to the 50th level, okay, we're not talking about a physical area, a physical a physical slavery. When a person hits the 50th level, you've lost that capability of morals and ethics being able to affect the body. And ultimately, what has happened, is that the mind has been, we'll call it, brainwashed, for lack of a better term. The mind has been short-circuited into a new mode of thinking, and that mode of thinking, for now, we'll call it the Egyptian mode of thinking. I'm a slave, I was always a slave, I'm always going to be a slave. I don't have any spirituality, I don't have any needs to grow, to become spiritually great. Okay? Very similar today in today's society. I mean, I think we can pull it across to today's society. If you were to take, I don't want to get too crazy about this, but if you were to take a group of people who are in prison for first-degree murder, okay, their morals and ethics are of a different level than we have. Okay, they have a different perspective on morals and ethics. Okay, initially, and why? Where did it happen? Were they not born with a soul? And we'll talk about, there is psychology to speak about this. We can talk about psychology. But ultimately what I'm of the belief for, I think this the idea that comes over here is that there is a clear soul. Every human being has a soul, and yet we have the capability of choosing to ignore the soul, to ignore the influence of the soul, and to allow whatever else there is, whatever I choose, to override the power of that soul. Okay, when the Jewish nation were in Egypt, the Egyptian nation were having this influence on them, and the Egyptian nation means absolutely void of any spirituality whatsoever, any relationship between them and God. That's what Egypt meant. Okay, and ultimately, as they were hitting the lower level, a lower and lower level influence of the capability of spiritual influence on the body was becoming depleted more and more. Therefore, and had they hit the 50th level, they would have crossed that invisible line whereby they were never able to walk out. And that's what we talk about, that God took the Jewish nation out of Egypt with haste. Not ultimately with physical haste that he kicked them out, but much more with the spiritual haste, that there was a rush to get them out of Egypt, to not let them fall down to the 50th level. Okay. Last 2 points, and very, very important points. Our sages say that there exists no free man other than he who deals with Torah. Okay, so if you think that you're free, unless you're dealing in Torah, our sages say that you're not a free man. So what does that mean, that you're not a free man unless you deal with Torah? Okay, on the contrary, people who deal with Torah, let's say, for example, we'll take a guy who studies in yeshiva, studies 12 hours a day, goes to sleep, wakes up, prays, studies, prays, studies, prays, studies. You call that a free man? Wouldn't that be called a slave to your religion? Right? Okay, so what is the definition of a free man? How would we define a free man? And this is a very, very important point for us to walk away with. This is the most important point of tonight. How do you define a free man or a free person? A free person is someone who can
freedom of choice.
Choose to do whatever he wants to do. Okay, so I can do whatever I want to do whenever I want to do. Right? Classical university student, right? Do whatever I want to do. Whatever I want to do, whenever I want to do. Okay. Now, is that a person who's physically free or a person who's spiritually free?
Physically. Physically.
Both.
You said both? Susan says both?
Yeah, both.
Physically free? What do you say, Sam?
Maybe 50%.
It's physical for sure.
It's physical for sure.
And maybe sometimes spiritual, not always.
Maybe sometimes spiritual, not always. Okay. If so, not always. That's a great. Not always. So, what type of person would we call an absolutely free person?
There isn't such thing as absolutely free. There have to be limits. I mean, there are laws.
Okay.
You can't just do whatever you want whenever you want.
Right. That is why. Okay. This is good. We're getting there. So, if I want to define a person who's absolutely free, what do I need to characterize? What do I need in order to say this person? What kind of character traits do I need to say that this person is absolutely free?
He chooses to live
Spiritually also. Right, spiritually means that that my actions are not influenced by my society. Right? That's what we're talking about, right? My actions are not influenced by my society. How would I define a person who's absolutely spiritually free? And the way of Desolate puts it is a person who is absolutely free is a person who is, well, these are in my words, okay, I'm not going to say these are his words, but this is my understanding. A person is spiritually free when he's able to do that which he does not want to do, despite it causing him tremendous pain. But he does it because he knows this is the right thing to do. Okay? A person is spiritually free when he's able to do that which he does not want to do, despite it causing him pain, but he does it because he believes that is the right thing to do. Right? Spiritually free means that my mind, my ethics, my morals are controlling my body. My body is lazy. My body has its lusts. My body has its emotions. And its emotions choose to do something else. Right now, my mind, my spirit, my morals, my ethics say, no, although it's causing you pain not to do that, I need you to do this despite the pain that it's causing you. The person who's able to function according to that is a person who's absolutely spiritually free. Therefore, our sages say, they don't say person, you see, look at number 7, I said, there exists no free man other than he who deals, and I put in brackets, studies with Torah. Studies Torah. I put it in bracket. I put it in parentheses. Why? Because it actually says osek b'Torah, who deals in Torah. This is Rabbi Levy. He says that a person who deals in Torah, it's not a person who's constantly studying. It's a person who every action of his day, throughout his day, is not his own personal action, but it's monitored or it's according to the agenda of a higher moral, ethical value. So therefore, when I function, when I wake up in the morning and I want to go back to sleep, and yet I force myself to get up and do what it takes in order to get me out of bed, to get me down to go to study, to go to pray, whatever it is, to go and do the action that I think is the right action that needs to be done right now. Okay, I'm allowing my spirit to function, to control over my body, despite the pain that it's causing, and that's ultimately what's a truly free person. Okay, we started tonight as Pesach is the time. Oh, I forgot about number 4. I know we're 5 minutes over time. Number 4, I asked how many mitzvahs are on Pesach night. We said 7 and at least 4, 7 or 8, 4. Okay, why so many mitzvahs? And our sages say, if you want to change, okay, how do you change internally? How do I get this brain to have control over the body? They say the external, it ignites the internal. I want to develop this control over my body, that my body functions according to high moral, ethical values. How do I do that? I function. I don't think it through. I act it out. So I know the right thing to do is this, and I'll go and do it. I won't allow myself to think through it. Therefore, Pesach, Passover, the time of freedom, when we talk about we're becoming free man, and we talk about us seeing ourselves as we could have remained enslaved, and we see ourselves becoming free through the season of the freedom, the time of freedom. What that is, there's a power now, right now, that we are able to tap into, whereby we're able to relieve ourselves of the constraints, of the short circuit that society is kicking into our body, that society is controlling our body, and we're actually truly able to function according to higher moral, ethical values. That is the season of freedom. That is the power of Pesach. That's what we do. We do a phenomenal amount of mitzvahs. Don't think, just do. Do. Act. Follow instructions. Your body will get into the mode of being able to follow the higher moral, ethical values.
What you said earlier about taking physical things and making experiments.